Welcome to the Best You podcast, where we explore the journey of inner peace, harmony, and joy that comes from living authentically. Every week, we will dive into transformative conversations that describe both the way you can create behavioral change for yourself and how to create the conditions that promote peace, harmony, and joy around you. Whether you're seeking balance, deeper relationships, or a spark of inspiration, you're in the right place. Welcome back to The Best You. In this 4-part series, we're talking about the heart of the hero. And in response to the call for all of us to rise to become a bigger version of ourselves during times of crisis. So in the first part, we talked about the hero's journey, a framework by Joseph Campbell that describes the process that humanity goes through when experiencing challenge and crisis. And so he talks about it in 3 parts. There's first the departure, where the hero, or the shiro, I like to call them, leaves their ordinary world and embarks on an adventure greater than themselves, and it experiences challenges bigger than they can prevail upon. And they realize that instead of viewing it as an external problem, that the way for them to prevail is to journey inwards and become bigger from the inside out. And when they do that and become bigger than the challenge, then they can return with the gift, which Campbell describes as the lost wisdom of our generation. And oftentimes people talk about this type of work as a way to acquire greater meaning in their life. And Campbell would say, no, that's not really true. Humanity does this, or humans do this, in order to feel fully alive. And so I found that really interesting, because it sort of implies that there's a numbness, when we are not fully leaning into and becoming the bigger version of ourselves. And I just sense that with society being so addicted to spending money or self-medicating on drugs or alcohol or electronics or hedonistic activities, that we are pretty numb. And but I also, I think I disagree with Campbell a little bit that the journey itself is very meaningful, and that they go hand in hand. So I'd also like to talk about what we're actually doing, in my view, when we do this journey. Because eventually what we do is we come back with the gift, which is a bigger version of ourselves. So what that entails is that we talked about last time, is that when we hit this rock bottom moment, that we have to confront the beliefs and habits that got us there. And when we crack that open and realize that we have to believe something different in order to get somewhere better, it means that we get out of our ego and get out of our heads and into a place that's more akin to our deeper truth, which you might call your heart. And it's really, to me, creating more balance in the ego, where the ego not being like, I'm egotistical, it's all about me necessarily, but the ego being more about how we view ourselves in the world, our social identity, and the belief that we're separate from other people and things. And while that is true, it's also true that we're interdependent with each other, and we're part of our ecosystem and Earth, solar system, galaxy, etc. So it's not to say that we should destroy our ego, because we do need to have boundaries and take care of ourselves. But the other thing about the ego, or actually the mind, our left brain, our cognitive self, though it is very smart and brilliant and capable of great things, it also tends to be very fear-based and judgmental. And so being in our fear and judgment can get us, can be the beliefs and habits that get us stuck. In contrast, when we are more in tune with our soul, then our soul tends to be able to rise above what we make out to be problems and challenges in our life. And the way I define soul, and I'd love to hear Scott's take on this, is it's the consciousness beneath our thoughts. So if you've ever meditated and allowed and have been in a practice of allowing your thoughts to float by without attaching to them, you can just, the metaphor is like leaves floating down a stream. You just observe them, but you don't pick them up. You don't worry about them. Oh my God, any of that. And the soul is the consciousness beneath those thoughts. It's the observer of the thoughts. It's the observer of the leaves floating down the stream. And the soul has great wisdom. And when we are in connection and contact with our soul and even conversation, we can access what I call our inner truth. And to me, this is the opportunity of rising to challenge that we get out of our head and out of our ego somewhat. That's not to say that we don't use them at all. Again, we need both of those things, but that we are not over relying on them. And I will just give one other example in that you may have heard of Gardner's multiple intelligences. So Gardner was a person who talked about IQ or intelligence, but Gardner also says that we have multiple forms of intelligence. For example, emotional intelligence or musical or visual spatial or interpersonal or intrapersonal intelligence. There's also kinesthetic intelligence, naturalist intelligence, logical, mathematical intelligence, and linguistic intelligence, according to Gardner. And by over relying on just one form of intelligence, we can be missing so much. It just like the idea is if all you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. And I believe that we could benefit by picking up a lot more tools and opening ourselves up to many forms of intelligence that is often not just IQ, and can be more in keeping with our deeper wisdom and truth. Scott, do you let's see. We could just pause the video a little bit, but is there anything you want to add right here, or should I just keep going?
I can add some things.
Okay, well, why don't you say something and then I'll go into the call.
Okay. You want to say, Scott, what are your thoughts on this or something like that?
Yeah, we'll just let them edit this part out, and then you can just it'll be you chiming in.
Okay. Yeah, so Sanna, thanks for, kind of setting the tone, and again, giving us some more framework about how to, how to think about the Shiro's journey. A few things I'd like to add. One is, you told us about Campbell's, is it about increasing meaning or is it about, feeling more alive? And I think you said it right. I think it's actually both. And interestingly, in our new book called Your True Greatness Awakened, we actually talk about this because I think there are a lot of people who are living with meaning, living their purpose, but not living it feeling alive or with joy, and so they're not feeling no good. By the way, there's lots of people who are having feeling alive, feeling a lot of joy, but they're not doing it with purpose. They're not feeling real good. What we say is you need both. If you truly want to live your true greatness, you need to have your purpose and you need to live with joy. It's amazing when you do both of those together how all this magic happens. So that's one point I wanted to make. The other thing is really I appreciate what you were having to say about the ego and the soul, and we talk about both of those in the book because they really play a big role in living your true greatness. And what we try to try to get people to understand, what we'd like you to appreciate is, they both are in you. Everybody's got a soul and an ego, and it's important that you are conscious of them, and that you try to get them to work together. What's interesting is they are almost polar opposites. The ego is really everything that is your kind of your physical being. You should appreciate. I mean, some people may have bigger egos than others, but everybody has an ego, and in fact, it is the reason we believe that you actually exist. Your ancestors, you go back thousands and thousands of years ago, your ego is like your 24/7 alarm system in your body. It's what kept you from getting eaten by a saber-toothed tiger if you were living back in the day. It's what helped your ancestors find food, helped your ancestors win wars, and today it still serves this purpose of protecting you. Unfortunately, the times have changed, and people's egos, haven't necessarily been adapted properly, or people aren't using them the way they should. But if you think about so many people you think that have egos, I mean, people who want money and power, those are things that would protect them. They just don't know when enough is enough. But there's so many other things that are going on in our lives. Anxiety. What do you think causes anxiety? That's your ego. Because when you are worried about, what's my boss going to think, or am I going to get a date, or am I going to have food on the table? I mean, all these things, social media, politics, all these things are your ego trying to protect you, that are causing anxiety. So your ego is really everything that impacts you physically, and it does protect you, and it is driving you to do things. But the thing about it is, your soul, on the other hand, is something that we believe is your connection with, you can call it God, a higher being, the universe, but it's something that is in you, and it knows all the answers. While your ego is responding and trying to protect you, your soul is and it's again, your ego is your 24/7 kind of high power alarm system. Your soul is this calm. It's like, I got all the answers. There's nothing to worry about. There's nothing to be. You are protected. You've got everything you need, and your soul truly believes that every single thing happens for a reason. We're all in it together. Everything is good, and basically, whenever there's something you need, or a situation, just tune into your soul, and your soul will give you the answer. And the magic happens when your ego and your soul work together, because your ego drives you to be successful, drives you to, again, to be safe, and just to have this wonderful life physically. Your soul drives you to help the planet be a better place, to help you be your best. It just wants good for everybody. And when the ego and the soul are teaming, you are driven, because your soul doesn't necessarily have drive, and doesn't have the physical body, but the ego allows the connection with the soul to all the answers to actually come to life. And everything that you want, everything that the people on this planet want, that you're connected with, it magically happens when your soul gives the answers and your ego makes them happen. And so I just think they're both incredibly important. And the real trick, the real opportunity, is to get them to work together magically.
Mm, that's really such a great insight, and well said. And I absolutely agree with you. It's really yin and yang in a sense, because our soul is the one that's hidden. It's the yin in this case. The yang is what we think, what we know, our understanding of the world, our expertise, that kind of thing. And it's not that you want to just be in your soul, or just be in your head or your ego. You want them to work together, yin and yang, in dynamic equilibrium. That was so well explained, Scott. Thank you for that insight. So we're talking about the first part of the hero's journey, or the shero's journey. It's the call to adventure, or the departure stage. And so what Campbell says about it is that our soul, or our destiny, I think is the phrase he uses, is always calling to us to step up and become that bigger version of ourselves. And these invitations can happen in all kinds of ways. Sometimes it comes as a letter offering you a job, like an actual invitation, but oftentimes it's fairly subtle. and we may not necessarily see it for what it is, or we may not be ready to say yes. Um, I know that many people my age are aware of what they are longing to do in the world. Maybe harder the younger you are, that you may not have that clarity yet. I didn't used to believe in this kind of thing, but I accidentally discovered my calling one day. In the last episode, I talked about my getting everything I ever wanted as the worst thing that ever happened to me. But what happened after I did that was I went on a period of openness and exploration where I just did what felt good and right to me, what felt enjoyable. So sort of I didn't have the words for it, but it was basically following Campbell's advice of follow your bliss. And by some serendipity and I guess a soul's invitation, I was invited to facilitate a leadership program for my campus. And I realized that I would just, every morning, I would jump out of bed and I would say, oh my God, I can't believe I get paid to do this. And I realized that something was very different about this work. And I love to sit down with the program participants and talk to them about their progress and what was blocking them. And inevitably, I would get the same comment: Susanna, you should do this for a living. And the 100 times prior that somebody said that to me, I was like, do what? We're just talking. I had no idea what they were talking about. But for some reason, and I'm sure because I'm so smart and quick, that I finally figured out that, like, this is a thing. This is a transferable skill, that I'm providing a valuable service. And all of a sudden, I had an aha moment. Oh my God, this is my calling. This is what I'm here to do. This is what I want to do with my life. And as Scott talked about in the last episode, that you should use your strengths and your gifts to do this. And the trouble is with your strengths and gifts is that they come so naturally to you that you don't even realize you're using them. So this is why our calling can sometimes be, we could be blind or blinded or blank about what we're here to do because we're doing it so naturally. So I have a list of some what I call breadcrumbs to your calling that I'm going to share with you. A lot of them come out of the strengths training that I did to become a strengths coach. They're also very, very true for me. So strengths, like your gifts and your calling, come so naturally. There's a lot of overlap there. And there's also no coincidence that when you use your strengths, you're just more likely to be engaged and enjoying yourself and successful. And you're much more likely to thrive, as it turns out. So there's great overlap between a calling and using strengths. But again, they don't always go together. As Scott says, you want to have it feel meaningful as well. So here are some breadcrumbs, and I'm going to go through this list slowly so that you could maybe jot them down and think about them. But of course, you can always pause this video. When you get suggestions and offers and invitations from others to do certain things. So for example, I was invited to facilitate this leadership program. Somebody saw that in me. Another one is if you have yearnings or longings to do something. This may indicate a strength or some sense of purpose that is calling you into service. You may have people complimenting you on superb performance, or maybe they give you glowing feedback. And again, maybe they're inviting you to come help. Can you please do this with me? Because they're seeing you at your best in a way that you may not recognize. So next time somebody compliments you, don't brush it off. Take it in and say, thank you for seeing that in me. And maybe spend some time seeing it in yourself. Also, if you're a quick learner, you pick up something easily and naturally. And if you enjoy it, then that might be a piece of the puzzle for your calling. There's also this word called flow. It means losing track of time during an activity. You're so engaged and engrossed that hours could go by in a blink of an eye. And you might have a lot of positive emotion, a sense of joy, exhilaration, satisfaction, or fun. So a lot of these check the boxes of the story I told about my calling. How about you, Scott? When did you first have an awareness of your soul's purpose? And did you have breadcrumbs that led up to it?
Yeah, it's a question I've gotten before, and I've tried to figure out a moment, but I really truly think it was a breadcrumb type of experience, and I like to use the analogy. I've tried to follow my heart more, and my soul more, maybe 1% more every year. It's, I think when I was young, I probably had some type of, follow your heart and connection with the universe and God. But I told the story about my father passed away when I was 20, you know, but I'll just say it's been a gradual thing, and I'd like to believe today that because 1% a year, if you just like your bank account, if you keep putting money in the same amount, it starts to accrue interest, and it really grows. I'd like to think that it's pretty big right now. I have a pretty big bank account of it, and I use it a lot. But here's the thing: my bank account ain't full, and I'm not using it nearly enough. And I'm still on this Shiro's journey to learn when something bad happens, when I mess up, like what happened there, like pay attention, like how can I do better next time? And just with all the different experiences, all the people, I'm always trying to how can I just make a bigger impact on them, and ultimately how can I be my best self? So I am constantly learning, and I can just say I put this 1% out there for everybody, right? Especially for me, but everybody. You should think you can get yourself 1% better every year. I mean, that doesn't sound like a lot. If just 1%, just a little better. But if you really commit to getting 1% better, maybe it's you do two or three if you're in a good year. But if you really truly do that, and then the next year try to do a little bit more and a little bit more, you'll be amazed how your anxiety will reduce, how the gifts and talents that you've been given, start playing beautiful music with them, and start really helping people a lot with them, and the joy. Sana talks about the bliss that you will start having all these joyful, blissful moments. But it really, it's in you, but you've got to just commit to working it. And yeah, it's a beautiful thing when you do.
Well, and it's a beautiful thing to see such a heart and soul centered leader like yourself, Scott, and so impactful and so service oriented. So there's so many benefits to following your call, as Scott um, laid out so clearly. Thank you for that, Scott. Campbell also talks about what happens when you don't follow the call, when you don't heed the invitation. And I'll just talk about it again from my story about tenure, because um, even though that was the worst thing that ever happened to me, was getting everything I wanted, my life and my body was giving me breadcrumbs saying that I was on the wrong track. I think they needed to be more bricks or something, because I was ignoring them. And my life, I don't know why I thought like that my life felt like it was in ruins before getting tenure, that it would just do a 180 afterwards, because this piece of paper that said that I wouldn't have to worry about getting fired. But this is actually called arrival fallacy. So it's a cognitive error. But I was having so many health problems. I was having fibromyalgia, which is a chronic fatigue syndrome. And I was having chronic migraines, like 15 days out of the month. I was having migraines. And my relationship with my husband was on the rocks. And I just didn't feel like I had the support of friends that I needed, because, of course, I was too busy trying to be perfect and super mom, that I didn't know what I needed. And I certainly couldn't have asked for it, even if I had, I would imagine. And so what Campbell describes this as psychological crucifixion. Yeah, it sounds pretty serious, right? And that's what I was doing. And I often see people who or in a similar situation where it feels like their life actually stops them in their tracks. And of course, this isn't always the case. Everybody gets to decide for themselves what it means when their life gets stopped in their tracks. Um, for me, I know that when that happens, that I'm missing the call, and the universe or my soul is trying to get me onto the right track. Scott, do you have a story about your life stopping you in your tracks? I guess you talked about that moment of crisis, but have there been other instances where it felt like your soul was conspiring to focus your attention elsewhere?
You know, I think I have those moments probably every week, honestly. Again, I'd like to feel like I'm getting better and better at this every year. I still am amazed by how many times I don't do as good as I'd like to. And one of the biggest places is at work. And I will tell you, I've got a team of people that work for me. We've got all these commitments and all these, goals and jobs we're trying to complete. And it's amazing to me how many times I don't communicate well what I either want or how I'd like it done. And obviously I think I'm communicating well, but it's interesting, the human being. I can have 10 people in a room, and I truly believe 10 people hear 10 different things, even though it's out of one person's mouth. And and I get tested all the time at work. I've got, the perceived pressure from my boss and my boss's boss to deliver results. And I've got these people who report to me, and then there's people that report to them, and so on. And there's all this stuff going on. And when things don't get done the way, I think they should get done, that's my test. Do I, how, do I from my heart have a conversation and try to understand and try to help them grow and learn, and let's figure out how to get there, and that's my soul? Or does my ego get involved and try to show how smart I am, and try to teach them a lesson, and try to put them in their place? I would say every year I feel like I'm getting 1% better at that, but it's one of the most challenging situations I have. And every week there's things that don't go right where I work, and I've got to, and I try my best to just remind myself it's a human being. They've got a soul. Let's help them grow. We're in this together. But it can be hard, especially when your job's on the line, or your boss has is going to interpret things, or get upset about certain things, results. And it's yeah, no, nobody likes to get in a penalty box, or not have good results, and especially when you're depending on others. So I think for me personally, because I've got an organization, and people work for me, it is I get tested all the time, and all I can say is I think I'm getting better, but it's definitely a journey, and my goal is to have a joyful journey with everybody, and that's what I'm working on.
Well, I love the journey you're on, Scott, and looking forward to find your path to becoming bigger than this challenge. I know you are all over it. So what Campbell talks about in terms of ignoring the call and psychological crucifixion, the story he tells is about the princess and the frog. So the way the story goes is there's a princess who's playing with her favorite toy by a lake, and it's a golden ball. And eventually the ball ends up in the lake, as I'm sure the queen probably told her it would. But anyway, the ball goes into the lake, and it's gone. She can't retrieve it. And she's crying and she's desperate. And then along comes this frog who says, Princess, I'll get your ball for you. And so he retrieves the ball and returns it to her. And she's so grateful. Thank you, frog. Thank you. You saved my favorite toy. And what can I do to repay you? And frog says, be my friend. And princess runs away. So this is the story of princess refusing her call because the frog was obviously magical, and she could have embarked on this magical journey with Frog, her new friend, and she didn't. So so don't be the princess. Um, accept the invitation for magic, I guess, is one interpretation for it. And be on a magical journey where your soul can show you how to feel safe and feel impactful, and show you the path to becoming a bigger version of yourself. So
And why did the woman not engage the frog? Because her ego was trying to protect her.
yeah, good point, Scott. Thank you. So thank you for joining us on this episode of The Best You and the Heart of the Hero. Join us for the next episode where we talk about the innermost cave. It's a good episode, so don't miss it. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everybody. Wishing you the best.
Thank you for tuning in to the Best You podcast. We hope today's conversation sparked some new ways for you to cultivate your inner peace, connect meaningfully with others, and embrace the joy of living in harmony. Remember, being the best version of yourself isn't a destination. It's a daily practice of growth, reflection, and kindness to yourself and those around you. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love it for you to subscribe, share it with somebody who'd benefit, and leave a review to help us spread the message of peace and joy. Stay connected, stay inspired, and we'll see you next time on The Best You.